In 2004, on the island of Cyprus, archaeologists opened a Neolithic grave. What they found inside didn't change humanity itself, but it revolutionized our understanding of how humans first bonded with animals. Beside the skeleton of a young man lay the delicate bones of a cat, carefully buried, intentionally placed, not as food, not as sacrifice, but as a companion. Radiocarbon dating revealed the site was 9,500 years old, predating Egypt's pharaohs by nearly 2 millennia. It was the earliest evidence of a friendship between our species, a quiet alliance that began on the edge of a field of grain. But where did that story truly begin? To find the answer, we have to go back to the very dawn of civilization, when humans first stopped chasing the horizon and began shaping the earth itself. "10,000 years ago, in the region we call the Fertile Crescent, modern-day Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Egypt, humanity changed forever. For countless generations, we had roamed the earth as hunters and gatherers. But here, we learned something new. To plant, to harvest, and to store. And with stored grain came uninvited guests. Rodents. Where there were mice, there came predators. And one of them, the African wildcat, Felis silvestris lybica, noticed that wherever humans lived, there was plenty to hunt. These wildcats lingered near early villages, watching from the shadows of campfires. The bravest, those who could tolerate human presence, had access to endless food and warmth. Over generations, this quiet proximity turned into coexistence. Humans benefited from fewer pests. Cats benefited from easier meals. It was not love at first sight. It was mutual advantage. Modern genetics tells the same story. In 2007, scientists sequenced the DNA of wild and domestic cats and discovered that every cat on Earth descends from the same subspecies, the African wildcat. Across 10,000 years of coexistence, their genome changed less than 0.1%. They remain, in essence, wild animals. Unlike dogs, bred by humans for obedience and work, cats chose their own path, evolving alongside us, not under us. The few genetic differences that did emerge relate to stress tolerance, coat color, and sociability. Just enough to make village life possible, not enough to erase their independence. Cats domesticated themselves. But the African wildcat wasn't the only one to answer humanity's call. In 2016, archaeologists studying 5,500-year-old bones from a Chinese farming village found something extraordinary. Farmers there had begun taming an entirely different species, the leopard cat, Prionelurus bengalensis. It was a separate, independent domestication event. But it didn't last. When lybica cats from the Near East arrived centuries later via the Silk Road, they replaced these local leopard cats, more adaptable, more sociable, better suited to life with people. History, it seems, had run an experiment, and the lybica cat won. In 2017, scientists carried out a remarkable genetic study that followed the ancient journey of cats, using DNA recovered from bones, mummies, and even shipwrecks scattered across the old world. What they discovered was a map written in the language of genes. 5 maternal lineages, each telling a story of migration. One began among the first farmers of Mesopotamia, where cats and people first learned to live side by side. Another took shape in Egypt, where cats boarded ships and sailed across the Mediterranean. A third spread through Europe, following the rise and fall of Rome and the reach of medieval trade. From India, their paw prints followed the Silk Road into Asia, and later, some journeyed east into China and Japan. These genetic footprints reveal something profound. Cats didn't conquer the world through breeding or force. They traveled because it suited them. Out of curiosity, opportunity, and quiet companionship, they simply followed us. And today, from Istanbul to Buenos Aires, every cat that curls up on a windowsill carries a trace of those ancient wanderers in its blood. If the Fertile Crescent was where cats met humanity, then ancient Egypt was where they became divine. By 3000 BC, cats were symbols of protection, fertility, and grace. They guarded homes and granaries, kept snakes and rats at bay, and charmed their human hosts with elegance and mystery. The goddess Bastet, depicted with a cat's head, embodied love, motherhood, and domestic harmony. To harm a cat in Egypt was a crime, punishable by death. When a family cat died, Egyptians shaved their eyebrows in mourning. They even mummified their pets, burying them with the same reverence as humans. Egyptian merchants carried cats aboard ships as pest control, and from the harbors of the Nile, they spread across the Mediterranean. Without knowing it, these sailors were setting in motion one of the most successful species dispersals in history. Cats became natural travelers. They followed trade routes from Egypt to Greece, Rome, and beyond. The Romans admired them as symbols of liberty, independent, proud, untamed. Roman legions brought them to Britain, Gaul, and Germania. By the Viking Age, cats had reached the far north. A 2022 DNA study found cat remains in Viking graves and trading posts, proof that these animals sailed across the Baltic and the North Sea. From desert sands to icy fjords, cats had become humanity's most successful stowaways, small predators riding the tide of civilization. But in medieval Europe, the story turned dark. Cats, once symbols of grace and protection, became creatures of suspicion. Their independence unsettled a world built on hierarchy. Their glowing eyes pierced the night, a night that, to the medieval mind, belonged to the devil. And their quiet companionship with women, healers, midwives, and widows, made them guilty by association when the church began its long war on so-called witchcraft. In the 13th century, Pope Gregory IX issued a decree known as Vox in Rama. It warned that heretics were seen worshipping a black cat during nocturnal rituals. The document declared, "In the presence of the cat, which is black and has been seen as an idol, they kiss it on the hind part and then on the mouth." From that moment, the animal that had guarded grain and ships for millennia was drawn into Europe's moral panic. Black cats in particular became living symbols of evil. Medieval paintings and woodcuts began to show them crouched beside witches or the devil himself. Folk tales claimed that a witch could turn into a cat to prowl unseen through the night. And in many villages, when someone fell ill or crops failed, the punishment was swift. The woman and her cat were both burned. Across Europe, from Germany to France and England, thousands of cats were tortured and killed in public rituals meant to purify the town. At the very moment Europe was persecuting its most efficient household predator, the continent was being overrun by rats, the true carriers of the Black Death. The irony is haunting. While the killing of cats did not cause the plague, it revealed something deeper about the age itself. A civilization so consumed by superstition that it destroyed its own natural allies in the name of salvation. By the 18th century, reason began to replace fear. But cruelty still lingered, sometimes disguised as laughter. In Paris, around the 1730s, a strange story emerged. Two printing apprentices, Nicolas Contard and L'Eveillé, mocked their master's affection for their pampered cats. While the workers starved in cold attics, the cats dined on the leftovers of the rich. One night, the apprentices staged a mock trial, accusing the cats of witchcraft and treason. By candlelight, they condemned and executed them in what history would later call the Great Cat Massacre. Centuries later, historian Robert Darnton uncovered the tale, explaining that it was never truly about cats. It was about resentment, class, and power. The cat's true cultural conquest came not in temples, but in parlors. During the 19th century, as cities swelled and the Industrial Revolution reshaped daily life, the cat's image transformed once again. No longer just a mouser, it became a symbol of grace, intellect, and emotional independence. In 1871, English artist Harrison Weir organized the world's first cat show at London's Crystal Palace, an event that elevated the household pet into an object of admiration and study. There, the idea of distinct breeds was born, and with it a new kind of beauty, the cat as art. Writers like Charles Baudelaire and Mark Twain praised their composure. Artists painted them as emblems of poise and mystery. From worker to muse, from pest controller to parlor companion, the cat evolved into the Victorian ideal of elegance, intellect, and freedom. But this redemption was not universal. While Europe and America were rediscovering affection for cats through science and sentiment, much of the world had never lost it. Across the East, their image carried no trace of Western superstition. In China, they were guardians of silk and symbols of calm. In Japan, the maneki neko, the beckoning cat, promised prosperity to merchants and travelers. In India, cats accompanied Sasti, the goddess of fertility, protecting mothers and children. While Europe learned to love cats again, large parts of the world had never stopped. In the Islamic world, cats had always been creatures of purity and compassion. According to tradition, the Prophet Muhammad cherished his cat Muezza, said to have once fallen asleep upon his robe. Rather than disturb her, he gently cut the sleeve to let her rest, a gesture that came to symbolize mercy toward all living things. From Cairo to Istanbul, cats were welcomed in mosques, homes, and marketplaces, guardians of both grain and grace, and perhaps an enduring reflection of the Prophet's own compassion toward them. Feeding a stray was seen not as charity, but as a quiet act of faith, a duty to creation itself. And nowhere on earth is that spirit more alive today than in the Turkish city of Istanbul. Istanbul's love for cats isn't something new or fashionable. It's a feeling that has grown out of centuries of faith and everyday kindness. The Prophet Muhammad's kindness toward Muezza found new life in these winding streets. For generations, people have built stone water bowls beside mosques, left scraps of food by their doorsteps, and treated every wandering cat as part of the neighborhood's soul. Today, Istanbul is home to hundreds of thousands of free-living cats, cared for not by any single owner, but by the city itself. Food bowls at doorsteps, water dishes in alleyways, tiny wooden shelters on sidewalks, all maintained by ordinary people. Here, the bond that began 10,000 years ago has become something deeper, a quiet understanding between humans and animals. For 10,000 years, cats have walked beside us, not as servants, not as possessions, but as quiet witnesses to our story. If you enjoyed this journey through history, don't forget to subscribe to the History Hub. Your support helps us bring the past to life, one story, one discovery at a time. And tell us in the comments, where do cats play their part in your city's history?